Welcome back to the show that will never have to worry about whether it gets a Christmas special or not this year. And this time, we're doing something a little different. We're not looking at a TV show, but rather what some would call a dying genre. We're looking at sci-fi comics. In the 60s and 70s, comics were a thriving industry in the UK, with dozens of titles for children to choose from. But now very few remain. But we're going to be focusing on the sci-fi stories. And to do that, we're going to need to start with maybe the UK's first sci-fi comic icon, Dan Dare. Created by Frank Hampson, Dan Dare was a sort of British Buck Rogers, and he debuted in the Eagle comic in 1950. Dare's weekly adventures battling the Mekons of Venus would continue in Eagle until 1969, when it was merged with sister title Lion, and he stayed there until Lion itself was closed down in 1974. Dan Dare would feature in another comic, but more on that later. But Dan Dare's legacy goes beyond his comic appearances. He had annuals. His stories were dramatised on Radio Luxembourg. There were video games based on him. In the 2000s, he even had his own cartoon series. And of course, Big Finish. Very obviously, boys' comics were the first point of call when you were looking for some sci-fi action. But not always. Sometimes, sci-fi stories would get lost and find themselves on the pages of girls' comic titles, such as Tammy and Judy, so girls weren't entirely uncatered for. There were attempts to launch sci-fi specific titles, one being particularly successful, but we'll talk more about that later. TV comics would regularly feature strips based on popular sci-fi shows of the period, and some titles would even be popular enough they would get their own exclusive comics. And I guess we have to talk about him now. Making his first appearance in TV comic in November 1964, this would also be the start of the Who Canon Wars, with the Doctor's comic exclusive companions John and Gillian. The Doctor would bounce around between various titles until 1979, with the launch of Doctor Who Weekly, which would later become Doctor Who Monthly and then Doctor Who Magazine. The format was behind-the-scenes stuff and interviews, but supported by a Doctor Who comic strip adventure. The magazine is still going today, albeit much glossier, but the format is pretty much the same still, complete with comic adventure. Indeed, it is the only place you'll get to see the 15th Doctor and the Daleks together. That Doctor Who magazine survived the wilderness years, one TV movie aside, when there was no TV show to talk about, stands as a true testament to the power of fandom. But we have put this off long enough. If we're going to talk about UK sci-fi comics, then there is one name that stands out above all. 2000 AD. First launched in February 1977, 2000 AD is sort of like the factory records of comics. It doesn't necessarily make a lot of money, but its reputation is as a creative's dream house. Amongst 2000 AD's alumni are such influential comic book industry figures as Brian Boland, Dave Gibbons, Garth Ennis, and of course Alan Moore, and a whole host of others. Each prog is introduced by the comic's editor, the alien Tharg, setting the tone for the rest of the comic. Popular stories from 2000 AD include the revamped Dan Dare, Slain, Kelly's Eye, and probably its most well-known IP, Judge Dredd. Dredd has been patrolling the streets of Mega City 1 for nearly 50 years now, and he's appeared in every prog of 2000 AD. He's made it all the way to Hollywood and been in a rubbish 1995 action film, but also a much better 2011 one. 2000 AD is still going strong today, and long may it continue. It will always have a lasting legacy, not just for UK comics, but for UK sci-fi as a whole. I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. Now obviously this is just an overview, but if there are any glaring omissions, or any UK sci-fi comics you think should be remembered, let me know in the comments. Until then, like and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I will see you next time.